Hello guys, welcome back to the course Thermodynamics. Today we are going to begin with lecture 11 from the course, but make sure you watch the previous ones before viewing this one. The topic for today's discussion is going to be heat, enthalpy and change in enthalpy. Heat is something that we have talked about in the previous lectures also. So what we will be doing is we will be just revising those concepts that we have already learned, because from today we are going to start a detailed discussion on heat. So the revising the concepts that we've already learned, we are going to learn this new term, that is enthalpy, and then the change in enthalpy. Change being more important than the term itself. It is just like internal energy and change in internal energy that you have learned in the previous lectures. It is always that is change in internal energy more important to us, because internal energy we could not measure in absolute terms. So similar is going to be something with enthalpy also. So change in enthalpy is going to be more important than enthalpy. So I hope you are going to enjoy your learning with me. It's going to be a very important concept that we are going to discuss today. So please be with me throughout the whole lecture. We will be revising the concepts first and then learning about enthalpy. So I am Dr. Ritu Johar, your educator from the channel H2O, the A to Z of chemistry, and I hope you are going to enjoy your learning with me. So starting with first of all the quick recap of the previous lectures, and it was in lecture number 1 where we used the word heat for the first time. And it was when we were discussing that there are two types of interactions which can take place between the system and the surrounding. One is going to be the exchange of matter and the other is going to be the exchange of energy. And when we say exchange of energy between the system and the surrounding, it can be either in the form of heat or it can be in the form of work. Now both these forms of energy, either it is heat or work, they appear only during the change in the state of the system across the boundary. What this means is that at the boundary of the system with the surrounding, well, either it is going to be heat passing into the system or heat passing out of the system, and in both the cases this is going to cause a change in the state of the system. Similarly, it is going to be either work done on the system or it is going to be work done by the system at the boundary between the system and the surrounding, and this also is going to cause a change in the state of the system, right? Now, what you have to remember is what is heat. So heat flows through due to a temperature gradient, while work, this is done due to the imbalance of generalized force. So work we have done quite a lot. We will just look back again a bit more into heat. So as heat is used as a mode of transfer of energy between the system and the surrounding, we refer it to as heat transfer, and we will denote it by the letter Q. So energy transfer occurring due to a temperature gradient between the system and the surrounding, this is called as heat transfer. Temperature gradient means a difference in the temperature of the system and the surrounding. What this means is if the system is at a higher temperature than the surrounding, it is going to lose energy to the surroundings in the form of heat. And the temperature of the system will decrease, the temperature of the surroundings will increase. Similarly, if the system is at a lower temperature than the surrounding, it is going to gain energy from the surroundings in the form of heat, and the temperature of the system is going to increase, and the surroundings, the temperature is going to decrease. And this transfer of heat will keep on taking place through molecular motion, the motion of the molecules, one molecule transferring heat energy to the next, to the next, to the next, and so on till thermal equilibrium is attained, which means when the temperature of the system and the surroundings, this becomes in equilibrium with one another. Okay. Now, very importantly, what you have to remember is the sign convention that we use for heat. We've already done it in the previous lectures. A lot of discussion in the first law of thermodynamics we have done about it. So I hope you all remember that Q is going to be positive if heat is going to be absorbed by the system, and it is going to be negative when it is going to be evolving heat. All right. Now, another very important thing that we have studied about is the units of heat. So the units of heat, essentially, they are going to be that of energy only. So the units of heat changes, they are going to be in calories, kilocalories, joules and kilojoules, such that 1 calorie, this is going to be equal to 4.184 joules. 1 kilocalorie is going to be 4.184 kilojoules. And well, the SI unit of heat, this is going to be joule, and the higher unit is going to be kilojoules, right? So I hope this is clear from what you have already studied. So the next time we talked about heat in the previous lectures was in the lecture number 9, when we talked about the first law of thermodynamics, which we also call as the law of conservation of energy, which was given by Mayer and Helmholtz in the year 1840. For understanding of today's lecture, where we are going to chiefly discuss about the enthalpy of a system, well, the first law of thermodynamics is very important. So please make sure that you have watched lecture number 9, where we discussed the first law of thermodynamics in detail. Without understanding that, well, you cannot carry on this lecture further. I'm just going to give you a quick recap of that discussion today, because it was in that lecture that first time, in fact, I used the word enthalpy. But there I told you that we will be discussing it later on. So that is later on that we will be discussing it today. Okay, so first law of thermodynamics, there are many definitions for that. I'm not going to go into the details of all those. What I will be discussing is only the mathematical expression of the first law that we use in thermodynamics. So, and how did we reach up to that? Let us quickly revise that once again. So if we have a system which is having an internal energy U1, we raise the internal energy of the system to U2 by adding Q amount of heat. So this means that U2 is going to be equal to U1 plus Q. And if we do some W work on the system, this means again some energy is going to be added to the internal energy of the system. So we can say that U2 will be equal to U1 plus Q plus W. Or we can say that U2 minus U1 will be equal to Q plus W. And if U2 minus U1, we write this as delta U meaning the change in internal energy. This is going to be equal to Q plus W, right? So change in internal energy, this is equal to heat added to the system plus work done on the system. Now, if it is going to be work done by the system, obviously the work sign convention will be negative. So it will become Q minus W. And if it is going to be heat that is going to go out of the system, then you will have to put a negative sign in front of Q. So the sign convention is going to be very important when you apply the first law of thermodynamics. But this is what we know as the first law of thermodynamics mathematical statement. So we will be carrying on our discussion on this delta U equal to Q plus W and reach on to the term enthalpy of the system now. Now, before moving still further, there is one more thing that should be very clear into your mind, and that is what is the nature of internal energy, work and heat. Now, what do I mean by nature? Well, what I want you all to remember and understand is that internal energy, work and heat, what are these? Whether these are state functions or these are path functions. Right? So we know from our understanding of the first law of thermodynamics that delta U is equal to Q plus W. And you also know from your previous lecture learning that internal energy, this is a state function, and work, this is a path function. So what is a state function? A state function is one which is going to be dependent only on the initial and the final state of the system. It is unaffected by what is the path of the process. Whereas a path function, this is going to be dependent also on the path that we choose for the process. And internal energy is a state function. So delta U will be having a definite value based on the initial and the final state of the system, whereas work is going to be dependent on the path that we choose. Now, you have already studied in your previous lectures a detailed understanding of the reversible and the irreversible process. You also have a detailed understanding of work done in the isothermal reversible and isothermal irreversible process. So I will pick up that example to make you understand what do we mean when we say that internal energy is a state function. In relation to that, also what do we mean by work being a path function? And along with that, in your previous lectures, you've also studied that, well, heat is also a path function. It is also going to be dependent on the path followed by the process, and it is not a state function. So we will develop that understanding also now, right? So the example we have is that we have taken a vessel fitted with a piston. In this we have enclosed a gas, and this we can compress isothermally by two ways. One is going to be the reversible process and the other is going to be the irreversible process, right? So irreversible process, we will be carrying it out at a constant external pressure, whereas for the reversible pressure, every step the pressure external is going to be changing. So that all concept I hope you all remember, so I will not go back into that details. Now what we mean over here when we say that internal energy is a state function is that supposedly if the internal energy of this initial state of the system, this is U1, fine. So what will be the final state? Let us call that as U2. Okay, and for this one also it is going to be U2 because we are going to reach up to the same state. Either the process is irreversible process or the process is a reversible one, right? So we are compressing this gas to the same level. When we are compressing it to the same level, the pressure at this point and the pressure at this time, it is going to be same. So P external will be same when we reach up to the final state of the system. So when that is going to be happening, well, both the cases, the internal energy is going to be U2 only. Okay, this is not going to be different because the internal energy, this is a state function. It is going to only depend on the initial and the final state. If the final state for both the processes, either irreversible or reversible, is the same, the internal energy will be same at the final step. Okay, so what will be the change in internal energy? Change in internal energy will be delta U. So that will be U2 minus U1. In this process also it will be U2 minus 1. In this also it will be U2 minus U1, right? So this is what we mean that this is a state function. And we also know from the first law that this delta U, this will be equal to Q plus W. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now what you have studied about these irreversible and reversible isothermal compressions is what is the work done in them? Is the work done in them similar? Nine. If you remember, I'll just show you the plot that we have for the irreversible isothermal compression. This is the graph that we have for it. And if I put on this a plot for the isothermal reversible compression, this is going to be the plot, and the area under this below this line, this will be work done in the reversible process. And you can see that the work done is going to be different for the isothermal irreversible and the isothermal reversible process. If I just draw the lines, so this area whole just below the line, this will be work done in the reversible, and the whole orange one, this is going to be the irreversible isothermal process work done. So you can see in case of compression, irreversibly work done is going to be more than the reversible compression. Okay, I hope this is clear. So what we can say is that if this I call as W1, that is the work being done in the compression, and W2, this is the work done in the reversible process, both of these are not equal, right? So I can say that W1, this is not equal to W2. But ultimately Q and W, the sum has to be equal to the same value, that is delta U, for both the processes, because delta U is same. So if W1 and W2, they are not equal, this means that Q1 for this process will also not be equal to Q2. Right? Supposedly, if for this process the work done is about some 4 kilojoules, and for W2 this is 3 kilojoules. Okay, and the change in internal energy, what is this? Let us say this is 5 kilojoules. Okay, so this is 5. W1 is 4, so this means that Q1 would be what? Q1 is going to be 1, right? And if this is over here 3, so Q2 is going to be 2 kilojoules, because the sum total, this has to be the same, that is equal to 5 kilojoules delta U value. So this means Q1 will also not be equal to Q2, right? Agreed, I think. So work done is not same in the two processes, and heat is also not same in the two processes, which means that neither work nor heat is a state function. Both of these, they are dependent on the process that we have, and both of these are state functions. So I hope this is very clear to you people that delta U, this is a state function, whereas Q and W, these are path functions. And also one thing in between what is written is that Q plus W, this is also a state function, because Q plus W, the value, this is equal to delta U, right? So if U is going to be a state function, the value of Q and W is also constant for the process, right? So this is also not changing, whether it is an irreversible process or it is a reversible process. Therefore, Q plus W is also a state function. These are questions which can come in the examination, and these are questions which you should have an understanding of. All right, so I hope this is clear. Now that you understand that work and heat, both of these are path functions, what I want you to remember more is that there are certain conditions in which work and heat, they can also be state functions. They will be only dependent on the initial and the final state of the system. So what are these conditions? First condition we have is an isochoric process. An isochoric process is one in which the volume remains constant. So delta V is going to be 0. And if delta V is going to be 0, P delta V will be also 0, which means that work is also going to be 0. And if work is 0, delta U, this will be equal to Q. Now what we have written over here is delta U, this is equal to QV. We have written this V so that you can remember that heat is at constant volume V. So when heat is at a constant volume, well, this becomes a state function. Why? Because delta U, you have just now seen that it is only the difference between the initial and the final state of the system. If the final state and the initial state, they are the same, irrespective of the path of the process, well, we will be having delta U value to be same. And if QV is equal to delta U, this means QV, the heat at constant volume, this will be a state function. So at constant volume, if the initial and the final state of the system, they are the same, whatever may be the path of the process, heat is going to be same. Okay, so it is going to be a state function. The next we have is an isobaric process. Isobaric process, a process in which pressure is constant. So work is going to be equal to minus P delta V, and we will be having Q to be equal to delta U minus W or delta U plus P delta V, right? And this we are calling it again a special name. This is going to be heat at constant pressure. And delta U plus P delta V, we are calling this as delta H. Delta H is change in enthalpy, and again enthalpy is also a state function. Now what is enthalpy? What is delta H? This is what we are going to carry on our discussion further in today's lecture. But again, just remember that QP, heat at constant volume, which is going to be equal to delta H, this is also a state function. Okay, now the next we have is an adiabatic process. So in an adiabatic process, Q is 0, so delta U will be equal to W. So in this case, we have work to be a state function. It will depend on the initial and the final state of the system only, not on the path of the process, right? So I hope you will remember these 3 points. Again, these can be asked in the competitive examination as multiple choice questions. So these are going to be very, very important. All right. Now, we have P delta V equal to 0 and delta U is equal to QV, where Q is the heat at constant volume. So what this means is that heat change at constant volume, this can help us calculate delta U. Right? There is going to be no work done in the process. Whatever heat supposedly, if this is entering the system, this is causing a change in internal energy, right? And change and how much amount of heat is going to enter the system, that is one thing that we can calculate. How we will be calculate if that is something else that we will be taking it up in the upcoming lectures, where I will be teaching you how you are going to measure this change in internal energy. Okay, so there this is going to be a very important concept, that if we have heat at a constant volume, we can calculate the change in internal energy of the system. Agreed? This will help us. Okay, so I will carry on this concept when we will be measuring the change in internal energy in the upcoming lectures. Now the next thing that should be very important to you is that constant volume means that the volume is not going to change. Fine. Now the volume, this is not going to change. This is going to be a process which is going to be very less seen when we are going to talk about chemistry processes. Okay, for example, if I talk about the chemical reactions which you generally perform in chemistry in your laboratories, they are generally the salt analysis that you people do in chemistry. Okay, and in salt analysis, what you people are doing is you take a test tube, you put some salt into it, you put some HCl into it, some H2SO4 into it, various reactions, you see what gas is coming out, and you try to detect the various cations, anions which are present in the salt, right? So there what is happening is that you have taken an open test tube. An open test tube, well, the volume is going to change. What is going to be constant in that is the pressure, right? So delta U value, this is not going to be very helpful to us in those processes where the pressure is constant and the volume is changing. So for those processes, actually, we need this change in enthalpy. All right. So the processes which are carried out at constant pressure, like the ones which are occurring in open containers, they allow a number of changes in volume to occur, and therefore the change in internal energy, this is not going to be helpful for us people. So for that, we need the internal energy term to be replaced by heat at constant pressure or enthalpy. Okay, so I hope you now understand why do we have a need for this term enthalpy, because with just the introduction of this term, well, this is going to make us understand where is exothermic reaction, what is endothermic reaction. So all those concepts, they are going to be related to this term, that is enthalpy, because in chemistry most of the reactions we will be making them to be happening at a constant pressure, and if we measure heat at constant pressure, well, we are going to learn a lot about the chemical reactions. So now what is enthalpy? Enthalpy we denote it by the letter H, and this is the total heat content of a system at constant pressure. What was internal energy? Internal energy was the total energy of a system, and this is the total heat content of a system under a special condition of constant pressure. So how are we going to derive the expression for enthalpy now? So we already know the first law of thermodynamics. That is why we've just revised that also, because to derive enthalpy expression, we have to use the first law of thermodynamics. So the first law of thermodynamics says delta U is equal to Q plus W. And in this, if I say that Q is the heat absorbed by the system at a constant pressure, we can write that as QP. And if I say the work is expansion work done by the system, so we can put that as minus P delta V. All right. So we have a constant pressure and work done at a constant pressure. When an expansion is taking place, it will be minus P delta V. So we can say delta U will be equal to QP minus P delta V. Now I can also write delta U as U2 minus U1, the final energy of the system minus the initial energy of the system. This will be equal to QP minus P into V2 minus V1, the final volume minus the initial volume. Right? Now if I take the P into V2 minus V1 expression to the other side, and this will become plus P into V2 minus V1, and if I open that bracket, what I will be getting is QP equal to U2 plus PV2 minus U1 plus PV1. Now if I substitute this expression U2 plus PV2 by a letter H2 and U1 plus PV1 by a letter H1, what I will be getting is QP equal to H2 minus H1. So H2 is going to be the final enthalpy of the system. H1 is going to be the initial enthalpy of the system. H2 minus H1 would mean delta H, the change in enthalpy, but I will just now come back to that. But here, from this, what we can generalize is that H, the enthalpy of a system at any state, it is the initial state or the final state, we can write that as U plus PV, right? The internal energy of the system plus pressure into volume work. So we can define enthalpy to be the sum total of internal energy and pressure volume energy of a system. Now, where did this PV come from in the system? Let us understand that also. You should have a clear understanding of each and everything. Okay, so I have a vessel. All right, in this vessel there is nothing. When there is nothing, there is no internal energy, and obviously there is no work also. But now when I put a gas into it, there is going to be some mass of this gas, so there is going to be some internal energy of this gas also, right? So that would be U. But now there was nothing initially, and you are putting some gas and you are maintaining it at a constant pressure also, right? So the work done to maintain that gas at this particular constant pressure, obviously you must have done some work also, right? And for doing that work, you must have supplied some heat to it also. That heat we are adding over here as PV. So work done by the system to maintain that constant pressure is also the amount of heat that has been added to the system, and therefore we call total heat content of a system to be equal to U plus PV. Okay, so I hope now this is clear to you why we call the total heat content of the system at constant pressure to be equal to U plus PV. Now, there are certain things that you have to remember for enthalpy. Number one is that H is an extensive property. So what is an extensive property? Extensive property is going to be that property which depends upon the amount of substance present in the system. So why is H an extensive property? Look over here. U is what? U is internal energy of the system. This depends upon the amount of substance. More is going to be the substance present in the system. More is going to be the internal energy because there are more molecules, ions, atoms present. So therefore, U is an extensive property. All right. Now from PV, you all know that volume is also an extensive property because more is going to be the mass, more volume that substance will be occupying. So both these terms, they are going to be extensive properties, and the addition of these obviously is going to be an extensive property. Therefore, we say that enthalpy is also an extensive property. Now, the next thing that you have to remember for enthalpy is that enthalpy, this is a state function also. All right, so it is going to depend upon the initial and the final state of the system. Delta H will be equal to H final minus H initial. It will not be dependent upon the path of the process. So just like we have internal energy, enthalpy is also going to be a state function. Okay. Now the next thing we have is that the absolute value of enthalpy we cannot determine. Why we cannot determine? Because one of the things which is present in the enthalpy is internal energy, and when you cannot measure the absolute amount of internal energy, how will you be able to measure the absolute amount of enthalpy? Right, so I hope these all points, they are clear to you. What is enthalpy? It is the sum total of internal energy and pressure volume energy of the system. Why is it so? Now I hope this is clear to you. Enthalpy is an extensive property. It is a state function and we cannot measure its absolute value. So what are we going to measure? Just like internal energy, we are going to measure the change in enthalpy of the system. Okay. So next, let us understand more about this change in enthalpy, that is delta H. So we have a chemical system of enthalpy H1, which is the total heat content of the system. Then we have its internal energy U1 because of the presence of the atoms, molecules, ions. There is going to be internal energy that is called as U1, and it is going to occupy some volume. So let that be V1. And this we are taking at a constant temperature and pressure, and we are now going to change it into another chemical system of enthalpy H2, internal energy U2, and volume V2. How we are changing this is something that I would like to talk in the next lecture, when we will be talking about the change in enthalpy in chemical reactions, because that is what we are interested in chemistry, what is happening in various chemical reactions. Okay. So we will be talking about that in the next lecture, and that is going to be very important because many questions they are coming from that portion of the concept. Okay. All right. So now we have H1. So H1 is going to be equal to what? U1 plus PV1, because we just now studied H is equal to U plus PV. And H2 is going to be equal to U2 plus PV2, right? And change in enthalpy, what is that? That is H2 minus H1. So just substitute the values, just going the back way round for what we did to develop the expression for enthalpy. So what you will be getting is U2 plus PV2 minus U1 plus PV1. This will be equal to U2 minus U1 plus P into V2 minus V1, and U2 minus U1 is delta U and V2 minus V1 is delta V. So what we will be getting is delta H is going to be equal to delta U plus P delta V. The change in enthalpy, this is going to be equal to change in internal energy plus pressure volume work, right? All right. Now, if we have only expansion work that is taking place in the change. So we are doing some change, and in that change there is only expansion work that is taking place. So you can say that work will be equal to minus P delta V, and delta U is going to be equal to Q minus P delta V from the first law of thermodynamics. If you substitute this value in delta U, what you will be getting is delta H is going to be equal to Q minus P delta V plus P delta V, or delta H is going to be equal to Q, and this Q is at a constant pressure. So this is going to be what? This is going to be the heat at constant pressure is going to be change in enthalpy of the system. So enthalpy change is going to be equal to heat absorbed or evolved at a constant pressure. So these are important formulas that you have to remember. Delta H is equal to delta U plus P delta V, and delta H is equal to QP, heat absorbed or evolved at a constant pressure. All right. Now this is when we have a constant pressure. But supposedly, if the pressure is not constant, that is also varying. So you have a gaseous system, and in the gaseous system, the pressure and volume both can be changing also. So then what will be the change in enthalpy? That is also very important for us to understand. So we have, in that case, delta H will be equal to delta U plus delta PV. The pressure will also be changing, or you can say that delta H is going to be equal to delta U plus P2 V2 minus P1 V1. This is the formula for change in enthalpy that you are going to use generally, because you will be seeing chemical reactions, and chemical reactions, as I've just now told you, most of them they will be taking place at a constant pressure. So this is the expression that we use generally. But there can be a question given to you in the examination where the pressure and the volume, both of them, they are changing. So in that condition, well, the expression that you will have to use is delta PV. And this is one of the questions which has been asked in one of the IIT examination. I will be just now showing you that question as well. Okay. Now, we have PV equal to what? For a gaseous system, that is equal to nRT. So this means we can also write for an ideal gas, delta H is equal to delta U plus P delta V, or delta H is equal to delta U plus delta nRT also. Okay, so these are the formulas that you have to remember for change in enthalpy and use them according to the applicable conditions. I am going to discuss now with you people what is the comparison of delta H and delta U for the various thermodynamic processes, that is the isobaric, isochoric and isothermal process. We are still not discussing about the adiabatic process because for that there are certain more things that we have to learn. So adiabatic process is going to be one process that I will be discussing separately only. So let us compare delta H and delta U for an ideal gas which is absorbing heat at constant pressure. So constant pressure means what thermodynamic process? It will be the isobaric process. So first of all, we have an ideal gas. It is at a temperature T1. We are going to heat it to a temperature T2. So the temperature is going to increase. When is the temperature going to increase? When some amount of heat is going to enter into the system. Right, this is an isobaric process. So whatever heat will be absorbed by the system, it is going to do two things. One, it is going to cause an increase in the internal energy of the system, and the other thing it is going to do is pressure volume work as a result of expansion at constant pressure. So this will be a irreversible expansion that will be taking place. Okay. So if you look at this diagram, you can understand that whenever heat is going to be absorbed at constant pressure, we will call that as QP. And QP, just now we have studied, this is equal to delta H. So delta H is change in enthalpy. Now, this heat we are utilizing first of all to increase the internal energy of the system. So internal energy is delta U, and the heat which has been used to increase the internal energy, that we will be calling it as QV, heat at constant volume. So whatever amount of heat went into the system but it did not cause any expansion, well, that is the amount that we have as QV, and that heat is just increasing the internal energy of the system. So QV is equal to delta U, and QP, this will be equal to delta H, right? And the rest amount of heat is going to be used in the expansion of the gas. That means increase in the volume of the gas. So delta H is going to be equal to delta U plus P into V2 minus V1, and delta H minus delta U is going to be P into delta V, that is work done by the gas during the process. So what is going to be the relationship between delta H and delta U? Well, delta H is going to be greater than the delta U value, or you can say that the change in enthalpy, this is greater than the change in internal energy. A part of the heat QP is used to increase the internal energy, and part of QP, this is used to increase the, used by the system for doing some work, right? So I hope now first of all you understand what is the relationship between delta U and delta H in an isobaric process. Now let us see an isochoric process. So now in an isochoric process, what is constant? I hope now this is by heart learnt by you people, that it is going to be the volume that is constant. So let us assume that we have an ideal gas. We are heating it isochorically with a volume V. So the volume in the initial and the final state of the system, this is going to remain constant. It is only the pressure and the temperature that is going to be changing. So we have initially the temperature to be T1 and pressure to be P1. We are heating the system, so the temperature will rise from T1 to T2 temperature, and because pressure is directly proportional to temperature, so the pressure is also going to rise, let us say, to P2. Right, and for this we have heated the gas. This means heat is going to be absorbed by the system, and heat is absorbed by the system at a constant volume, so we are going to write it as QV. And just now we have learned that QV is equal to delta U. So all the amount of heat that we give to the system at a constant volume, this is utilized only for increasing the internal energy of the system, because delta V is 0. So P delta V is also going to be 0. Therefore, work is 0. Delta U is equal to Q plus W. Therefore, W is 0. So delta U is going to be equal to Q. Right. So I hope now this is clear. All right. Now, delta H is equal to delta U plus delta PV. Right, so this is the general expression that we can use for any type of process, that delta H is equal to delta U plus delta PV. So in this case, what we have is PV that is constant and P that is going to be varying, right? And delta H, this is going to be equal to H2 minus H1. Delta U is going to be equal to U2 minus U1, and delta P we can write as V as a constant and changing P2 minus P1, right? So this is one way in which the numericals can be given. Various values they can be given to you. You are going to put this formula and find out whatever is going to be missing. Another thing, rather than giving you the internal energy, the final and the initial internal energy, what will be given to you is that there is some heat being absorbed by the system at constant volume. So there what you will be putting up is as delta H is going to be equal to QV plus P into P2 minus P1. Okay, I hope this is clear, no problems. So you have an understanding of this formula now. Good. So what does this mean is that the pressure of the system is increased by a difference of delta P, and the difference in the enthalpy change and internal energy change will be equal to V delta P. And what does this mean? What this means is that the system in the final state is going to be more stressed out, and this state is being reflected by the change in enthalpy. Okay, so there is going to be much more pressure the system is going to be having, so it is going to be more stressed out. And how do we come to know that it is going to be more stressed out? Because the final enthalpy is going to be more than the initial enthalpy, or you can say that the change in enthalpy value is going to be a positive one. Okay, so now what will happen when we have an isothermal process? So for an isothermal process, the temperature is going to be constant. So if you are going to heat an ideal gas, well, if there is some pressure P1 and volume V1 initially, the temperature will remain constant. The pressure and the volume will be changing to P2 and P2. All right. So for such a process, again, delta H is equal to delta U plus delta PV. And PV for an ideal gas, this is no equal to nRT. So we can write delta H is equal to delta U plus delta nRT. Right now, if we have taken a gas in a vessel, the number of moles of the gas will be constant. So N will be constant and R is going to be constant. So we can write delta H is equal to delta U plus nR delta T. But here in this case, first of all, the temperature is constant. So delta T will be 0. And also you have studied that for an ideal gas, if the temperature is not going to change, there is going to be no change in internal energy of the system as well. So this means that in this case, delta T will also be 0 and delta U will also be 0. And therefore, delta H is also going to be 0. So what is going to be the relation of delta H and delta U? Well, both of them, they are going to be same, and both of them, they are going to be 0. There is going to be no change in internal energy as well as the enthalpy of the system if we have an isothermal process, right? Now let us compare delta H and delta U even for the solids and the liquids. So far we have already talked only of the gaseous system. So whenever we are going to have solids or liquid which are heated at constant pressure and constant volume, what is going to be the comparison between delta H and delta U? Let us understand this. So whenever a solid or a liquid, for example, here you can see that the solid is being heated. So whenever pure liquids or solids, they are going to be heated, the change in volume and pressure is going to be negligibly small. So if we have supposedly an isobaric heating, that means the pressure is going to be constant. So we know that QP will be the amount of heat that will be absorbed, and this is going to be equal to delta H, the change in enthalpy, and delta H, this is equal to delta U minus the integral of P dV, where dV is going to be the small change in volume, because in case of the liquids and solids, this is really a very small change in volume that is going to take place. In fact, it is so small that we can say that dV is going to be approximately equal to 0. And when this dV is going to be approximately equal to 0, we can say that PdV is also going to be 0. So therefore, what we can say is that delta H is going to be almost equal to delta U. There's not going to be much difference in them. Similarly, Similarly, during an isochoric heating, what is going to be the heat absorbed? Heat is at constant volume. So this is going to be equal to delta U now, the change in internal energy. And delta H is going to be equal to delta U minus the integral of V dP, because volume is going to be constant. It is the pressure that is varying, but now this pressure is also varying by a negligibly small amount. So again, we can say that now this dP is going to be approximately equal to 0, and therefore vdP, the integral of this is also going to be small, and that is also going to be approximately 0. So again, what we will be having is delta H is going to be approximately equal to delta U. All right, so whatever is going to be the change in internal energy, that is going to be the change in enthalpy, or whatever is the change in enthalpy, that is going to be the change in internal energy of the system as well. Okay, so I hope now this is clear. Let us see 1-2 questions based on the concept and then finish up the lecture. So the first question that I have for you is that if 100 joules of heat is supplied to a container filled with an ideal gas and volume rises from 1.2 liters to 1.54 liters at constant pressure of 1 atmosphere, calculate delta H and delta U. So the first thing that you can see is that there is heat being supplied to the system. So the system is going to absorb heat, and the sign convention for that is plus sign. All right, so heat absorbed is at a constant pressure. So this means this is what? This is QP, right? And we just now studied that QP, this is equal to delta H, the change in enthalpy. Therefore, delta H value, this is going to be equal to 100 joules. The next thing that we have to find is delta U. So delta H, this is equal to delta U plus P delta V, or you can say that delta U, this will be delta H minus P delta V. So just put down the values. So delta H, we know this is 100 joules because this is QP. Pressure, this is given to us as 1 atmosphere. Volume is increasing from 1.2 to 1.54. So V2 minus V1 would be 1.54 minus 1.2 liters. But here now, we are just not going to simply solve this. Please do remember that you have to see the units. Here delta H is given in the SI units, that is joules, and therefore pressure into delta V, this is also energy, or this is work, and this should have the same units as that of joules only. If you are seeing now the units, this is atmosphere liter. These are not the SI units. For pressure, the SI unit is going to be Pascal or Newton per meter square. And for volume, the SI unit is going to be meter cube. So you have to make the appropriate changes so that these two terms, they are having same units, right? So 100 is going to remain 100. 1 atmosphere is equal to 1.013 into 10 power 5 Newton per meter square. So that is what we have done. And then liter, this is equal to 10 power minus 3 meter cube. So you have to make these changes so that this term also becomes the SI unit of energy. All right. So the answer that you will be getting is 100 minus 34.44, and this is going to be equal to 65.56 joules. That will be delta U, and delta H will be 100 joules, right? I hope this is clear. There is one small little trick which you can remember to remember the conversion of atmosphere into pascals. Okay, how you are going to do it, let me tell you. You have 1 atmosphere, okay, or I would like to write this atmosphere as a small a. Fine. This will be equal to, again put a 1, then put a decimal. For a just looks like a 0, so you can put a 0. T is just similar to a 1, so you can put a 1. And M, if you just twist it around by an angle of 90 degree, what you will be getting is a 3. So 1.013 into 10 power 5. This will be equal to Pascal, or this will be also equal to Newton per meter square. And if you want to write it in bars, you can write it as 1.013 bar. Okay, and the other units which are left are 760 mm of mercury, or it will be equal to 76 centimeter of mercury, and this is also equal to 760 torr. So these are the conversions that we have for pressure. So you should be remembering this. You are supposed to remember the conversion of 1 atmosphere into all these. This is very important. You do not forget that. All right, the other are for liters, so that also you can remember that 1 centimeter cube, this is equal to 1 ml. Okay, so 1000 centimeter cube, this will be equal to 1000 ml or 1 liter, right? And 1000 centimeter cube, this is going to be equal to 1 decimeter cube. So 1 decimeter cube is equal to 1 liter. And if you want to convert 1 decimeter cube into meter cube, so that will be 10 power minus 3 meter cube. So these are the conversions, they are for volume. So these are something that you should have written it somewhere, and you have to remember them all very well. Please do not forget these. Okay. This is something that should be always remembered by you. Just keep it somewhere and keep on remembering this. Put up some sticker note in on your walls or something. Please do remember this. The next question is, how are delta H and delta U related, or what is the difference between delta H and delta U in the fusion process and the process of evaporation? So what is fusion process? Where the liquid is going to get converted into a solid, and what is evaporation? When the liquid is going to get converted into a gas, right? So we know that delta H is going to be equal to delta U plus P delta V. In case of the fusion process, well, the change in volume is almost going to be equal to 0 because the liquid is getting converted into a solid. There is not much change in volume. So therefore, what we can say is delta H will be equal to delta U in the fusion process, whereas in the case of evaporation, there is going to be a large change in volume because the liquid is going to get converted into the gaseous state. And therefore, when there is going to be a large change in volume, P delta V value is going to be appreciable, and delta H, which is equal to delta U plus P delta V, is going to be higher than delta U, right? So in case of the fusion process, delta H is almost equal to delta U, whereas in the process of evaporation, delta H is going to be greater than delta U. So this is one application of the concept that you can remember. So the last question which we are going to see today before we conclude this lecture is, 1 mole of an ideal gas. This undergoes a change in state from 2 atmosphere 3 liters 95 Kelvin to 4 atmosphere 5 liter 245 Kelvin with a change in internal energy delta U to be equal to 30 liter atmosphere. The change in enthalpy of the process in liter atmosphere is, and the choices given are 40, 42.3, 44.0, or not defined as the pressure is not constant. This is a question which has been asked for the IIT examination 2002. So here is important concept that you have learned, that even if the pressure is not constant, you can find the change in the enthalpy of the system from the formula delta H going to be equal to delta U plus delta PV. So this is very, very important that you just do not remember that delta H is equal to delta U plus P delta V. The general formula is going to be this one. If the pressure is going to be constant, it will come out. If the volume is going to constant, volume will come out. So this is the generalized formula. Please do remember this. Generally, it is not going to be asked in the examination, but still IIT is IIT. That is why it is different. So it has been asked for the IIT examination. Fine. So the rest, if you know the formula, well, there is nothing big in the question. It is a very simple question. You have to just put down the values, delta U plus P2 V2 minus P1 V1. So the values, when you're going to put delta U, this is 30, P2 is 4, and V2 is 5. So 4 into 5 minus 2 into 3. So the answer that is going to come up as 30 plus 14, and this will be equal to 44 liter atmosphere, and the correct option is going to be C choice, right? So I hope now the concept is very clear to you people. So that would be all for this lecture. I hope you enjoyed your learning with me, and the next lecture, as I've already told you, that we are going to talk about enthalpy in a chemical reaction. A very, very important concept. So please be with me for the next one too. See you again. Have a nice day. God bless you.